Literally, the toilet just started running. Early season hiking can look incredible. Quiet trails, melting snow, sunny skies. But this is also where I see hikers make the biggest mistakes. Because spring conditions are unpredictable. You can go from dry dirt to snow, mud, and rushing water all in the same hike. And to be clear, I'm specifically talking about mountain and alpine hiking trails, where elevation and snowpack really affect trail conditions. So this isn't necessarily about desert hiking or lower elevation trails that dry out earlier. I've spent years hiking in Colorado, including climbing 46 of the state's 14ers, and spring conditions are some of the most unpredictable and wild that you will encounter. After decades of hiking, these are the early season hiking mistakes that could absolutely ruin your day. Let's do it. Mistake number one, forgetting your traction. One of the most common early season hiking mistakes is not bringing traction. Even most of the trail looks dry, you can suddenly hit a steep, icy section, especially on north facing slopes or in shaded areas that don't get a lot of sun. And that one batch of ice or slippery snow can completely stop people, or worst case scenario, put you in the hospital with one slip. I've seen hikers turn around just a mile from a summit because they aren't prepared for a short section of snow or ice that they simply couldn't cross safely. So, microspikes. Microspikes aren't as big or bulky as full on crampons, but they still are a nice type of traction. Popular options include yak tracks or Catula. They're lightweight and they're easy to throw in your backpack, and they can make a huge difference when you encounter those scary, slippery conditions. And depending on when you're hiking, snow slopes can also bring avalanche risk in the spring. If you're heading into higher alpine terrain or steep snowfields, it is definitely worth checking the avalanche forecast before you go. Mistake number two, not wearing waterproof footwear. Another mistake I see all the time is hikers showing up in lightweight trail runners without any waterproofing. And look, I love trail running shoes too. But early season trails are almost always wet, let alone snowy or really, really muddy. Snow is melting, the ground is saturated, and sometimes there are small streams running right down the middle of the trail itself. You might start your hike on dry ground and then suddenly hit slushy snow or muddy sections that soak your shoes. And once your feet are wet early in a hike, it's pretty hard to have a comfortable day. You're wet, you're cold, and you're mucky feeling. Plus, in chillier conditions, those wet feet can be a major liability. Waterproof boots or waterproof trail shoes aren't always necessary in the middle of the summer, but in early season mountain conditions, they can make a huge, huge difference.
I've lived here in the Colorado Rockies my entire life, and I have learned one thing from all my decades of playing outside in the winter. Your hands set the tone for everything. If you have cold fingers, you're miserable. If you can't feel your hands, you are just not going to have any fun. And that is why I only wear Hestra mittens. They are the warmest I've ever used, and they last forever. I've had this pair here for 10 years, and I still ski in them every single weekend. So, yeah, whether I'm skiing, winter hiking, winter camping, or just dealing with really, really cold days, my Hester mittens are the one item that I know is always going to be in my kit.
Mistake number three, walking around the muddy sections. Early season hiking is also mud season, shoulder season, whatever you want to call it. And this is when a ton of trail damage actually happens. When hikers encounter muddy sections, a lot of people instinctively walk around them instead of through them because they don't want to trash their shoes. But when people do that over and over and over again, the trail slowly gets wider and wider. This damages vegetation and causes erosion, and over time, it can really, really degrade the trail. The best practice is actually to walk straight through the mud and slop because remember, that's why you're wearing waterproof shoes. Your boots might get dirty and sloppy and muddy, but that helps keep the trail narrow and protects the surrounding landscape. And if the trail is extremely muddy, the kind where you're just sinking in deep with every step and it's just not ending, sometimes the best decision is simply to turn around and come back later when conditions improve. There is always another trail. Mistake number 4, forgetting your gaiters. Okay. Again, this only really applies if you're in the mountains or alpine terrain. But as you start gaining elevation in the mountains, there's a really good chance you're still going to encounter snow well into the spring, but even into the summer. In Colorado, sometimes we can find snow into July. And that often means post holing, when your foot suddenly punches through the soft snow. It's like the seventh circle of hell. It's the absolute worst because it's slow and it's frustrating and it's cold and it's really, really hard. If you're not wearing gaiters, that snow ends up inside your boots, soaking your socks, and making your feet cold, wet, and miserable. And if you're hiking in shorts or lightweight hiking pants, those icy chunks of snow can actually scrape up your legs as you step through. I've definitely been cut and bleeding thanks to annoying bouts of post holing. Gaiters are a small piece of gear that make a big difference in these conditions. They help keep the snow and water out of your boots and make hiking through patchy snow a lot more comfortable. And honestly, they don't bother you once you pull them on, so you can put them on at the beginning of the trip if you want, or you can just chuck them in your backpack and save them for the time when you need them. Mistake number 5, forgetting about all of those stream crossings. Dun dun dun! Another thing that changes dramatically in the spring is stream crossings, river crossings. Snowmelt means water levels are often much higher and moving way faster than they are later in the summer. A crossing that's a simple rock hop in July or August can turn into a fast moving, really scary river during peak runoff in the spring. Wet rocks, cold water, and stronger currents can make these crossings shockingly tricky. Sometimes they're impossible to cross. We have one popular hike here where I live that had an insane runoff a few years ago, so much so that the river actually took the entire bridge and swept it away. There wasn't any funding to fix it, so the trail had the sketchiest river crossing for the next 4 years. For most people, that river actually turned into the new turnaround point because nobody could get over. Trekking poles help a lot in these situations because they give you extra balance and stability when you're stepping across slippery rocks or moving through shallow water. Because 4 legs are always better than two, right? But sometimes the swollen rivers mean it's just time to turn around and come back another day. Early season hiking can actually be one of the best times to get outside. The trails are quieter, the scenery is beautiful, and it's a great way to get back into hiking after the long, dark, cold winter. But conditions in the mountains can and do change quickly this time of year, and a little preparation goes a long way. In my next video, I'll break down exactly what to wear for early season hiking so you can stay comfortable even when the weather and trail conditions change. I'll see you out there.